How I describe myself?
Genius, billionaire, playboy from it.
I definitely feel stressed. Yeah, it's like been incredibly difficult and painful the last several months.
Painful?
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sleeping on the factory floor, not because I think that's like a fun place to sleep. You know, it's terrible.
Sleeping on the factory floor why are you doing that?
Because I didn't have time to go home and shower. I sleep on the couch over there.
So you're just laying here on the couch?
Yeah.
It's that simple?
Yes. I don't believe like people should be experiencing hardship while the CEO is like off on vacation. The truth is stranger than fiction. Okay, this is why it's important, and even if the odds are that it won't succeed, it's worth trying to do it. And I think you can create a great company. You see the difference between a startup that is successful and one that is not, and it's because the successful one, they both made mistakes, but the successful one recognized the mistakes, fixed them very quickly, and the unsuccessful one tries to deny that the mistakes exist.
You know, extremely smart people are sometimes quite arrogant because they believe in what they believe in, right? And so when they face criticism, it's less likely to admit, you know, they can make mistakes. Was that in your case?
I learned it when I was studying physics. You know, in physics, you're taught to always question yourself. You're taught to always assume that you're wrong, not assume that you're right, and you have to prove yourself not wrong. And so I think that physics framework is really where I learned it, and it's very effective for learning counterintuitive things that aren't obvious.
So you are very famous in saying that failure is actually an option, and if you're not failing, that means you're not innovative enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I like failure. I mean, who likes failure? It's terrible. But if you only do things that are certain to succeed, then you're only going to be doing very obvious things. When you're building something new, there's going to be mistakes. And it's important to recognize those mistakes, acknowledge them, and take corrective action. And the success of a company is very much more about how quick are you to fix the mistakes, not will you make mistakes.
Or admit mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. Then I'd say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. And I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expending, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts. And then the final thing is, don't just follow the trend. You may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach of first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method. And then I think that the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. As you get older, your obligations increase. And once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
I think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear. People shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. it's normal to feel fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%, and I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress if we could just move the ball forward. Even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward, so that would still do some good. Yeah, same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low.
You almost had a nervous breakdown. Where did the tenacity or the resilience come from?
But I mean, I remember the closest I ever came to a nervous breakdown. I never thought I was someone who, I thought nervous breakdowns, that's ridiculous. Why would people have such a thing? But I remember waking up on the Sunday before Christmas in 2008 and thinking, like, damn, this is the closest I've ever gotten, and it was looking pretty grim, because at that point, even though the fourth launch of SpaceX had succeeded, we were still running out of money, because we had three failures and only one success. Still not enough. And then the financing round for Tesla had not closed, and we had only 2 days, maybe I think it was like 2 or 3 days maybe, to close it before Christmas. So I was like, man, this could be a really bad end of the year. Maybe both companies will fail.
Did you cry? Screams?
I wasn't. I didn't cry.
Smash your apartment?
No.
No.
My sleep was difficult. Not to think critically enough. I mean, critical thinking is a skill in short supply. People take too many things they assume too many things to be true without sufficient basis in that belief. So it's very important that people closely analyze what is supposed to be true and try to build up. Try to say, let's analyze things from first principles, not by analogy or not by convention. If you assume things are true by convention, which is actually what most people do, then it's difficult to gain insight into how things can be bettered. So, in any argument or any sort of train of thinking, you want to make sure that the underlying premises are valid and applicable, and then in reaching a conclusion, that the conclusion you're reaching is necessarily driven by the underlying premises and the interconnection between those premises. That may seem like a really simple thing to say, but most people don't do that. So it's really the foundation of rational thought. I think also people tend to overweight risk on a personal level. It's one thing if you've got, a mortgage to pay and kids to support, and that if you were to deviate from your job, how are you going to feed your family and pay the rent? Okay, that's understandable, but let's say you're young and you're just coming out of college or coming out of high school or whatever. What do you risk? You're not going to starve. I mean, it's really certainly not in any kind of modern economy. It's so easy to earn enough money just to live somewhere and eat good. You could, that's very easy to do. So I don't know what are they afraid of? They're mostly afraid of failure, I think, but people should be less risk averse when there's not much at risk.